Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
It's been years in the making, but a controversial border policy is set to end this week. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Title 42 is set to expire on Thursday. So what are local cities and the county doing to prepare for an expected influx of migrants? KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado posed that question to local, state, and federal officials.
We don't know the number of migrants who will be allowed into the U.S. daily, the plan, or if there is one. But we do know that thousands of people who have been prevented from seeking asylum under the emergency COVID law must be processed and allowed in starting Thursday, when Title 42 ends. And the first place most of them will get aid is San Diego. We reached out to Governor Gavin Newsom, Representative Juan Vargas, Board Chair Nora Vargas, Supervisor Joel Anderson, and San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria. The only official who granted us an interview is Anderson.
The county is not prepared financially or otherwise to endure having 1,000 people street released every day.
Anderson says that has been weighing on him, but says his pleas for preemptive federal aid and resources have gone unanswered. Even communication has been lacking.
We have estimates that say maybe we get 100 people a day being street released, and then we have others that say it could be as much as 1,000 or 10,000. So we don't know the exact amount, but if FEMA was here, I'd rather be over-prepared than under-prepared.
Over-prepared with a large, secure location like a stadium or convention center, he says, where many resources are available and people can be processed and not be left on the streets if capacity is met at local shelters.
If you have 100 people dropped off every night on the streets, how long will it be before criminals prey on them?
Vino Paginor, the CEO of Catholic Charities of San Diego and Imperial County, says they have been preparing. The nonprofit has been at the front lines of helping refugees.
In the last 2 years, little over 195,000 people. And that 195,000 individuals that we have seen, 122 countries have come through those. And almost 1/3 of them are children.
He says his organization is just one NGO that is helping, and they alone can process about 1,500 people a day, and most of them end up staying a day or less at their shelter. But he says they too have been left guessing about how the process will work, and they're asking the federal government to help control the flow of people and open more places for them to go if there's a surge they can't handle.
They need to work with entities to ensure that we create, whether it is the county or the city, that are temporary overflow locations instead of people being on the streets.
Customs and Border Protection did not respond to our requests for comment. Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
And after the interview, Supervisor Anderson's office reached out saying the county got word that $33 million in federal funds will be made available. And his office added that FEMA should open a large facility to avert a crisis. The mobile app for asylum seekers known as CBP1 will be all the more important once Title 42 is lifted. Coming up, why some say the app doesn't help the most vulnerable migrants. After the COVID-19 public health emergency ends, some people used to receiving medications through telehealth will need to visit a doctor in person. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson spoke with a doctor about what's at stake.
The prescriptions affected by the change range from drugs considered to have a high potential for abuse, like Adderall and fentanyl, to those with a low potential, like cough syrups. For some, access to certain medications can mean the difference between living and dying of an overdose. Dr. Christian Ramers of Family Health Center San Diego says telehealth greatly increased access to addiction treatment medications.
Buprenorphine used to be more narrowly restricted. And this is probably the most valuable and important weapon for us against the opioid and overdose crisis to use, to try to get people off of fentanyl and heroin. That's what's killing people, more than 1 or 2 a day in San Diego County.
Doctors can prescribe an initial 30-day supply to people who've only been seen over telehealth, but they will have to visit a doctor in person within that month in order to continue receiving their medication. In-person visits will be even harder for those facing higher barriers to access, like lack of housing, transportation, or time. Raymer says they will find a way to get people these life-saving medications, no matter what.
The rules changes and these kind of technicalities are not going to stop our will to keep doing that.
The Health Resources and Services Administration found that more than 500,000 people live in an area of San Diego County with a shortage of primary care providers. Katie Heisen, KPBS News.
KUSI, an independent television station that's operated in San Diego for over 40 years, is being sold. Texas-based Nexstar Media Group announced today it will acquire KUSI for $35 million. Nexstar is the same television group that owns the CW network and Fox 5 San Diego. The deal could open the door for KUSI to become a CW affiliate station. The acquisition is still subject to regulatory approvals, but Nexstar says the deal should close later this year. Starting today, San Diegans struggling to recover financially from the pandemic can apply for cash relief. County officials say they'll be giving out $4,000 to more than 2,000 households. Applicants must earn less than 200% of the federal poverty level. The range is from less than $30,000 for a single person to no more than $60,000 for a family of 4. Recipients will be selected at random and will be able to choose how they want to spend the money.
In the past, when we've been able to deliver funding, we tell people what they can do with it. What we're doing this time is saying, we trust you, we believe you, and we're going to provide you with the resources that you need to make the decisions about where you need to put these funds.
Applications are open through May 21st at midnight. What would happen if there was no child care? As KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne shows us, child care providers and parents posed that question today.
Being as a union is the only thing that we can do. We need to be together on this, and we need to fight for our benefits.
They say it takes a village to raise a child, and sometimes that village takes the form of a daycare center or nanny. But today, child care workers nationwide wanted to show what a day would be like with no child care.
Well, how is it going to be for a parent that needs to go to work and all of a sudden the daycare is closed? Me as a parent, I will be terrified not knowing who am I going to leave my child with if my daycare provider is closed.
In San Diego, members from the Child Care Providers Union organized the event. They say child care providers should get better pay. Rosa Estrada has been a child care provider for 18 years. She says that even though she doesn't get benefits like retirement or vacation time, she's been there to help families. She says the income they get is ridiculous. Many facilities have gone out of business or face staffing shortages, limiting the amount of kids they can care for. The rollout of universal transitional kindergarten has also hurt enrollments, something Estrada thinks isn't healthy for young kids, not because she's a provider, but because most parents need childcare from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. She says teachers have to follow a curriculum, so they can't offer the love and attention many centers provide. But because transitional kindergarten is free and childcare is so expensive, many parents have no choice but to send their kids.
Childcare has become far more expensive over the last few years, particularly because facilities and providers have gone out of business, which means there's fewer spots, means it's more expensive, it's harder to get off a wait list.
San Diego City Council member Raul Campillo joined the child care workers in support of their movement.
Somehow these workers always seem to be left out, even though it's one of the most important services that all families need. So what does that tell you about our priorities? It means we're not prioritizing these workers and the children and families that they support.
Child care workers hope their voices can be heard to pave way for legislation that supports affordable care and quality jobs for care workers. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
California is one step closer to approving reparation payments for black residents. The state's Reparations Task Force approved recommendations that could mean more than $800 billion in payments to black residents. The goal is to address past injustices, including housing discrimination, mass incarceration, and unequal health care access.
Black Americans have given our labor, our ingenuity, and our talents to this country while going through a whole uphill battle and facing the most horrendous things that still they're trying to deny to this day. What I want is the same freedom dues that the abolitionists were fighting for. That freedom dues is cash reparations.
The panel must submit a final report by July 1st. If legislators approve the recommendations, it would be the biggest reparations effort in U.S. history. After nearly 2 months of closures, traffic is now flowing on both sides of State Route 78. But as KPBS North County reporter Alexander Nguyen tells us, more work is expected on the freeway.
This is what State Route 78 looks like this morning. A few weeks ago, it looked like this. The roughly 2-mile stretch of the freeway between College Boulevard and El Camino Real in Oceanside has been closed since mid-March after a sinkhole opened up on the westbound lanes.
I'm here today to report that the paving and striping for emergency culvert repair work on State Route 78 will be completed today.
Everett Townsend is Caltrans Chief Deputy Director. Caltrans closed the eastbound lanes in early April to continue repair work on the culverts. That was supposed to be completed 3 weeks ago, but was delayed because of weather and how deep the crews had to dig.
Sometimes at depths of 60 feet to uncover and replace 9 damaged culverts.
Caltrans was still putting the finishing touches on the freeway this afternoon. Behind me, crews are still at work restriping the lanes. Caltrans says the freeway will be reopened by the evening commute. During the closures, stores along the 78 say there was a noticeable slowdown in business. But for commuters like Eddie Carrillo, it was a major hassle, adding 30 minutes to his already long commute.
Sure, I use the 5 every time. I work all the way to Del Mar, and I had to take 101 in order to get to my house. I live in Vista, and it's very, very, very bad.
Caltrans says it will continue to do rehabilitation work on the 78 between the 5 and the 15, but there won't be any daytime closures affecting people's commute.
This project will not only help ensure that the roadway is protected from drainage impacts, but will also improve roadway quality, function, and service life.
Caltrans says the work now will reduce the need for future maintenance and construction. In Oceanside, Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
A warning that this next story has graphic and disturbing video. Police near Dallas say the accused killer in a mass shooting at a mall was kicked out of the Army years ago. Mike Valerio also has new information on some of the victims.
He was the kindest and sweetest, most caring man you'd ever interact with.
Christian Lacour, a beloved 20-year-old Allen Mall security guard, and Aishwarya Tadikonda, a young engineer from McKinney, Texas, among the 8 victims killed on Saturday. And as the lives lost come into focus, so does the potential ideology and motive of the gunmen who took them. Investigators believe the 33-year-old shooter killed by an Allen police officer may have been motivated by right-wing extremist views. A law enforcement source close to the investigation says the gunman wore an RWDS insignia, possibly meaning right-wing death squad, an insignia worn in recent years by members of various extremist groups, say legal experts.
It shouldn't be surprising to anyone that we're seeing that this shooter engaged in anti-Semitic or racist white supremacist sort of posts in his social media.
Investigators are combing through the shooter's online profiles and items that may have been collected during weekend search warrants. Some neighbors seem surprised.
Nothing ever showed me any signs of, hey, this guy seems to be the kind of guy that, you know, would do what he did.
I know that there are a lot of, let's say, early stories about the shooter out there. People should not jump to conclusions because there's a lot of conflicting information about him.
Governor Abbott urged patience in the wait for answers.
In the coming days, the public will be much better informed about why and how this happened.
In Allen, Texas, Mike Valerio, KPBS News.
CBP1 is a mobile app that is supposed to help asylum seekers enter the United States. With more migrants entering the country, this app could play an even bigger role at the border. But KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis says the app isn't helping those who need it the most.
Every morning, hundreds of people living in Tijuana's Agape migrant shelter stare anxiously into their phones. They're logging into a mobile phone app that schedules appointments for asylum seekers hoping to enter the U.S.
Me ha tocado ver personas gritar de alegría, otros llorar también de felicidad, porque pues por fin están logrando lo que necesitan.
Vidal Garcia is one of them. He says that he's seen people break down in tears of joy after finally getting one of the coveted appointments. Since January, about 15,000 migrants in Tijuana have secured appointments through the CBP1 mobile app. But most of those appointments haven't gone to people like Garcia. Almost half of them have gone to Russian nationals, even though they make up less than 10% of Tijuana's migrant population. That's according to numbers from the Mexican government. This is a huge racial and economic disparity, says Enrique Lucero. He's head of Tijuana's Migrant Affairs Department.
Como no hay un filtro para determinar quién es vulnerable o quién es más vulnerable que el otro, eso ha sido, yo creo, la mayor falla de la aplicación.
Lucero says that CBP1 does not give preference to more vulnerable migrants. In fact, it rewards those with newer smartphones and more powerful Wi-Fi connections. This means that it specifically rewards the Russian war refugees. The majority of them can afford airfare to Mexico. They tend to stay in hotels with powerful Wi-Fi signals. Meanwhile, Central American migrants walk to Tijuana. They sleep in overcrowded migrant shelters and struggle to use the mobile app on their outdated phones.
Tienen mejor teléfono, ¿no? Un iPhone o un Samsung. Tienen mejor conectividad, porque no es lo mismo estar 1000 personas en un albergue conectado todos a la misma vez que estar en tu hotel 4 personas. Entonces, la conectividad es un factor importante.
Lucero says that CBP1 doesn't distinguish a Russian migrant from a Central American one. That leaves migrants like Garcia on the outside looking in. He's been living in the migrant shelter for more than a month with his 2 siblings, their partners, and 4 nephews. He's not resentful of the Russian war refugees. Most migrants feel a strong solidarity with all asylum seekers, but Garcia doesn't think it's fair that CBP1 picks one group over another.
When I see people crying or jumping because they're happy, I feel the same emotion because I'm happy about them, because I wish them the best. But then I get in the office and start to cry. Sometimes, not all the time.
Pastor Albert Rivera runs the Agape migrant shelter. He sees the migrants desperately logging onto their phones every morning, and he says this is happening all along the border. Every morning, tens of thousands of people all trying to log into CBP1 at once.
You have about 50,000 immigrants all at the same time trying to enter in one place. So it gets overjammed, and then there's not too many of them that get an appointment.
Rivera recently invested in a stronger Wi-Fi connection, but says that it's still not enough. And he's not an open borders guy. Rivera knows that the U.S. cannot let everybody into the country without vetting them. He calls it a balancing act between security and humanitarianism.
We cannot say, okay, we're just interested in security and forget about human rights. And we cannot say, okay, we only are interested in human rights but are forgetting about security. And that's the problem that all the politicians have.
But to the migrants waiting for appointments in Tijuana, the entire system seems really off balance. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
On Friday, CBP announced changes to the app. The agency will expand the number of appointments and prioritize people who have been waiting the longest. These changes will start on May 10th, the day before Title 42 is lifted. And you can find this story and all of our in-depth feature reporting on the KPBS YouTube page. That's also where we live stream KPBS Evening Edition weeknights at 5.
Over the course of the next couple of days, we will continue to experience low clouds, at times even some mist throughout the coastal zones and even into some of the interior valleys. And that will keep a lid on the warmth. And we're going to be talking about cool air as we go right into a Thursday. Beyond that, very late this weekend to this weekend, we'll talk about a warming trend. But again, low clouds, the big theme here the next couple of days, and that continues here for tonight. We drop down to 58. Northbound Oceanside, 55. Southbound Chula Vista, 55. Over the interior, Ramona down into the mid-40s. Borrego Springs, 57. Mount Laguna down to 43. And as we venture our way into tomorrow for Tuesday, again, morning, low clouds and fog, even some mist along the coast. Temperatures climbing back into the mid-60s, a little bit below the historical average, mid-80s on tap for Borrego Springs. Mount Laguna tops off at 51. And again, we're in the month of May now, and we do see that big slide here with regards to the historical average rainfall. Typically, again, right around 1/4 of an inch, but we're not really talking about that much in the way of precipitation here over the course of the next couple of days. A lot of cloudiness around at the coast, perhaps some morning mist into Wednesday. And then, like I said, late this weekend we'll talk about that warming trend. We go into Friday, we go into Saturday, we're back up into the 70s. High pressure higher up is going to be building. And we'll also notice overnight lows climbing back into the upper 50s. Interior valleys, lots of clouds the next couple of days, right into Thursday. And then the turning point here later on this weekend to this weekend, we'll start to encounter some warmer air, mid-70s, early weekend call here up to 83. So there's the warmth. Meanwhile, with the mountainous locations, also some wind in combination with the chill. Now, we're only looking at mid-40s on tap for Wednesday afternoon, but wind here the next couple of days. And then we'll start to see those temperatures turning around by the weekend as we talk about the deserts. So a little cool on Wednesday, and then we'll start to heat things up going into Friday, also into Saturday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Povick.
Some San Diego elementary school students spent part of their weekend playing music designed by professionals at New York's famous Carnegie Hall. KPBS education reporter MG Perez has more on the local connection to world-class learning.
It's a familiar tune you probably did not know had lyrics, but it does. The classic Blue Danube Waltz, based on a poem composed by Johann Strauss and considered the unofficial second national anthem of Austria. All historic facts these students learned before they played it.
A beautiful dream of me and you. The stars seem to float above the sky.
On Saturday, 220 students came by the busloads with their family and friends to perform at UC San Diego's Mandeville Auditorium alongside the La Jolla Symphony. It's a collaboration created by the Education Department at New York's Carnegie Hall. Yes, that Carnegie Hall. The world-famous concert venue provides the curriculum and resources for students around the world to perform with professionals.
Music at this early of an age definitely affects them and moves them into just the enjoyment of different kinds, a different range, a different focus.
Here in San Diego, the Carnegie curriculum is provided by Villa Musica, a local nonprofit organization that makes music accessible through education, providing lessons and outreach to families who might not be able to afford it. That includes free music lessons offered at 5 satellite community music centers around San Diego County.
When you say this is a Carnegie Hall initiative, it's truly something that's been well thought out, well devised, and obviously they have the reputation.
Adriana Verduzco loves the change it's created in her young daughter's spirit.
She loves it, she enjoys it, and I'm just proud of who she's going to become in years if she keeps playing this instrument, right?
This is the classic waltz that could bring a big finish for students in their music education. MG Perez, KPBS News.
And here's another look at today's top stories. San Diego County is expecting an influx of migrants when Title 42 ends on Thursday. That's when thousands of people who have been prevented from seeking asylum under the emergency COVID declaration must be processed and allowed into the U.S. Supervisor Joel Anderson's office says $33 million in federal funds will be made available to the county. Under the COVID public health emergency, doctors can prescribe controlled substances for addiction treatment through telehealth. Providers say it has greatly increased access, but after May 11th, patients who've never been examined in person will need to be in order to continue receiving the medication. And eastbound State Route 78 is back open after more than a month of closures. It was all because of emergency culvert repairs stemming from a sinkhole that opened up during the winter storms. Caltrans says work will continue on the freeway between Interstate 5 and 15. However, the closures will happen overnight to avoid affecting daytime commutes. And here is a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. NPR's Morning Edition will dive into this year's winners of the Pulitzer Prize, which honor some of the most impressive journalism of the past year. And KPBS Midday Edition is talking about post-pandemic everyday life, from tipping to hybrid work schedules, some of the changes that are sticking around. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.